especially about the economy, that have since been largely not discussed. Mr. Karuhanga, you're most welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you. And good evening, viewers.
Listeners.
Oh, listeners,
but Joe over there, our producer, is keeping a keen eye on you.
What will it take to fix the Ugandan economy for the long haul? What was ignored? What needs to be done? Is there some prescription that was possibly ignored at some time? Mr. Karuhanga, you've been watching the Ugandan economy. What do you make of its overall performance at the moment?
I think the economy is in a bad shape. First of all, there is a structural problem within the economy. And this is a problem that as we fought for independence, we aimed at correcting. But unfortunately, when NRM came to power, instead of pursuing that line of approach, they changed course. Whereas I personally believe in the role of the private sector. I believe in the homegrown private sector going alongside or in partnership with foreign investors. But when you bring in, and also where the government participates, you can even see now the American economy. When there were problems, the government came in and took part in those companies which had a problem. Likewise, an economy which is in a nascent stages like the one of Uganda, in a developing economy, the state has taken stage in initiating development projects. But before you have developed the private sector, you say the private sector will take center stage. Where is it? Instead, when you do that and open too early, you get foreign sharks who come in, take over everything, and like the situation you get today. If you look, the telecommunication sector, the Ugandan role is minimal. The financial sector, commercial banks, insurance, our role is near zero. Power. When you look at how much Umeme collects, when they collect, they don't invest. They have to externalize.
But why do you need a domestic private sector that is active? Because one argument would be that more Ugandans have bank accounts today, and more Ugandans have access to communication that wasn't available to them earlier.
I don't know what you mean, but if I had to take you back, if I take you to American economy, when they fought for independence, I'm not a student of history, I'm a scientist, but as far as I know, if you know what they call the Eastern Blockade, after independence, the nationals of America wanted goods imported from Europe. But the leaders said no, because at that time, goods made in America were more expensive and of poor quality, and they're not competitive. So the population wanted goods made where?
In Europe.
It was fashionable.
It was fashionable to have goods from Europe, but the leaders said no. They went for innovative research and development and improved their market in order to protect their market. They produce their products and protect their markets for indigenous.
But there was a political rationale for that policy.
Yeah.
I want to understand yours. Why should Uganda grow a domestic private sector? Because
do you know why? Let me ask you. Do you know why you asked for the visa when you are leaving Uganda? They know your shares are in Uganda, and our shares are vested through markets. If you give away your markets, like we have given away our markets, you are in for trouble. And that's why I call up upon the government today, that when people come and demonstrate on the streets, show you, actually that is the highest level of democracy. When people come to demonstrate, they're showing you that they are Democrats.
But let's go back to the economy a little bit.
Yeah, because I'm trying to raise the point. This is a problem which is facing the country is facing, and we must face it as a united country.
You said you believe in liberalism or liberalization of the economy.
Yeah, but you must be strategic. It's not a matter of waking up one morning.
But you cannot afford to reinvent the wheel.
What do you mean?
The world has moved on. The world has moved on. The technologies you need to bring in from elsewhere, you need to facilitate Ugandans to think for themselves and do things for themselves.
Who told you that? even developed economies, they have had parastatals. Even there are parastatals in America.
Yeah, but the argument is not against parastatals. I want to understand.
Yeah, but you see, okay, let me show you
the politics behind your prescription.
Okay, my
because
prescription
I know that there is in fact there's a domestic private sector. You can argue about whether it has got the right amount of influence in the economy, but I don't buy your argument that you need somehow to shelter wholesale a domestic private sector, especially since we know that Ugandans, given the two industries that you mentioned, have got, since the mobile phone explosion here, have got a lot more services from mobile phone companies, and certainly a lot more services from banks.
I don't know how you perceive what you are saying. The objective is that we are governed by markets. The market is very important to any geographical country called a country. If you have no stake in that market, you are in trouble. I would rather even have a president who is a foreign, or what he called a colonial governor, when we are controlling our markets.
Yeah, but to what end is this control?
The control of the market is that we must have a stake. If I don't, you can pattern, but not give away wholesale.
But how do you define that stake? Because are you talking about ownership? Are you talking about participation?
How do we own? Let me put it this way. When we talk about these are young economies, the population doesn't have the money. Actually, most of the money is held by the state at that material time. That's why it is fashionable when that situation is that the state must initiate an enterprise and finally sell it over to the population.
So you're suggesting that there was over withdrawal of the state in the privatization process?
Over withdrawal of the state and opening the gates too wide to bring in foreigners instead of... let me give you an example. If you go to this company, Tumpeko, which was given to Wavamuno.
GM Tampeko, yes.
GM Tampeko. When Wavamuno makes money through GM Tampeko, he goes to establish another industry here. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
But when Umeme collects billions, they have to externalize it. Secondly, we had to look at the economy. We must also guide the economy when you're in the government. You say today, what can we make here instead of importing it? Then you also assist, promote the private sector and help them manufacture those products instead of importing. But when you say we don't care, and I can show you what happened. Uganda, there was a lot of goodwill for Uganda after Min. When Obote was there for a short time and Rutwa, so all the donors were willing to give money. But unfortunately, when they gave the money, instead of going to invest, we took to consumerism.
Initially, when President Museveni and the NRM came to power in 1986, the push was barter trading to try and develop the domestic industry to spur it to growth, but that was defeated.
No, barter trade does not.
My question is
the objective of barter trade was not that.
My question is, if you were in President Museveni's position, or if you're in government, would you have been able to withstand the pressures from multilateral?
I was among the people who opposed barter trade, and actually supported liberalization, smart liberalization. Actually, not only other the person, but even Serafako the farm did a study which recommended that. I personally supported that, even I did a talk about it, that we must liberalize, but systematically. I'll show you China is liberalizing.
What would your strand of liberalization
China is liberalizing. But when you compare the approach of China with that of Russia, of Yeltsin, they are quite different. The Yeltsin approach caused problems in Russia. But the Chinese approach is systematic and is going to bring more economic stability. And it actually has brought more growth than in Russia. You've
had an economy in this country that for the last 2 decades has been growing at an average 7%, at some time hitting 9%.
Let me tell you, that's the NRM propaganda. I want to tell you, when NRM came to power, our external debt was about 1.2 billion.
Shillings or dollars?
Dollars. Within a few years, it came to about towards 5. Then HIP came in. They wrote off the debt. And
that's highly indebted poor countries.
Yeah.
Initiative.
It was reduced to about 500 million. Today, where is it? But what have we done with all those billions? So, to tell you the truth.
Where is the problem? Is it the management of the economy?
That is the issue. That when we put a government, is to manage the economy and to manage the politics. If you mismanage the politics and you mismanage the economy, then everybody is in trouble. And today, that's why we're saying the issue should not be arresting people, beating and those who walk to work. Is actually to see how we can talk as one nation. Those people, as I put it, those people who go to work, actually the highest level of democracy. They tell you, otherwise they could also go to the bush and start planting landmines.
I wanted to go back to your argument that the involvement of the state must be to shelter and grow a domestic private sector.
No, let's go back. What is the objective of the state? Or what should be the objective of a government when it comes to poverty eradication? You must look at the poor people you have. If your policies are not aiming at eradicating poverty for the poor people you have, and you're only enriching a few, you could have 10 Madvanis here. They'll constitute the GDP. But the poor people are remaining. You have a problem.
Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I totally agree that the liberalization has produced a lot of inequality and not addressed the poverty problem properly.
No.
But even worse.
I think the issue is not liberal. I think is unmanaged liberalization, lack of systematic liberalization. Because you can liberalize in certain sectors when others you haven't liberalized. Let's say like liberalization in education. I'm happy about it.
If you
Are you?
Yeah, in the education sector.
If
The education quality in this country is in focus.
No, that is the difference at I'm talking about commercial level, but not at the...
No, but if you use the example of...
No liberalizations, anybody can start a school. But then you put standards. That's a different matter.
No, but if you look at the example you just used, the one of education, what you have is that there is almost total loss of control.
How?
There are many schools mushrooming in every corner. Some of them, hold it a moment. Some of them have nice, fancy looking adverts, not actually buildings, of buildings that they own. The public education system is in a crisis of its own. The private education system is raking in millions of money, but giving very poor quality. And the question is, what kind of children are you preparing for the country?
No. I think we must separate the two. Issues of economics. We are talking about issues of economics. Issues of economics, the commercial sector has done its part to liberalize the education sector. But now the education ministry must come in to put proper regulations that will govern the quality of education.
But we have a situation here, Mr. Karuhanga.
Yeah.
The private investors in education are there. The Ministry of Education exists. The quality of education overall given to Ugandan children is pathetic.
That's the governance problem. You blame it on the government. But what we're talking about in economics terms, let me give you an example. We are looking at the inflow of funds from outside. We are receiving a lot of money coming in from outside because of the way we liberalize education. Now we are being let down by one side of government by not putting proper regulation that will govern the quality of education we give.
You're trying to give prescription to the government of Uganda as is today to fix economic, social, political problems as they are today. And you're advising them on the education sector. If Serefako were hired to advise the government on fixing education, given the massive private investment and the quality problems, what would you tell them?
The quality problem, you must put clear benchmarks for quality. If your license is going to be renewed, you must achieve certain standards in terms of classes, in terms of laboratories, in terms of the teacher, in terms of the quality, and we must monitor the type of the quality of education you give in a lecture and how many students sit in a lecture room.
You see, I follow your argument completely, and I was trying to drive you to explain what was wrong, whether it was the policy or how it was implemented, and if you argue that there has to be a sequence for liberalization, and you've given many examples, and there's a book written about this, about how the West kicked down the ladder by I forget, is a Korean economist. But what in your view would have been the sequence is my first question. Secondly, if you're complaining that liberalization did not turn out the way it could have turned out, then was the problem the soft state or the market that you have an issue with?
Can you respond to that after a short commercial break? We'll be right back.
Thank Thank you.
It's live, it's hot, provocative, and digs deep into the issues. It's KFM's Hot Seat.